Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and man, I don't know where to start this week with the podcast. Actually, it's easy. I'm going to start with our idiot-in-chief, the smartest business and war strategy man in the history of the world. He posted a picture of himself as Jesus today. Like, as in Jesus fucking Christ. I saw that shit, and immediately I thought, what an absolute fucking moron. He's going to piss off the last of the people who like him. But then, he does what he always does, and he tells another lie. If you believe the Ayatollah of America when he says he was a doctor in that photo, you're stupid. While it's not that nice of me to call people I don't know stupid, you're not only stupid, but you're worse than that. You're the problem with this country. If you believe corrupt government's telling you, if you believe everything that the corrupt government is telling you, please don't have children. They most likely will be as dumb or dumber than you. And to all of the people out there with barely a high school education, who seem to be all about our red hat and orange-faced leader, I understand that you're stupid. You have no education. And that means that if you're my friends, these days I see your true colors, and I talk about you and I laugh about you behind your back. But I've done that forever because I've always known you're dumb. I'm saying I, but I mean we, because I'm talking about the collective we, but I'm doing that in the first person because this is my personal opinion. And shit, a lot of us have dumb friends. That's part of life. But it's the smart folks and our smart friends that are the real disappointment. I know smart people that back our fat fuck of a president. They vote with and for their money, and while they try to act like they're nice people who care, they don't give a shit about anyone but themselves and their finances, even if they are your friends. So your healthcare and your well-being, they may say they care about it, but they vote in a different way because they don't care about you. They care about their wallet. And a lot of these folks out there claim to be religious too. And to each his own. I'm not going to shit on anyone's religion. I don't pray because I don't believe in God. And if I did, I would pray for our dude who stole the election to stop breathing. And you know my story. I've lived with death recently, and it's terrible to go through. But you know what? When that piece of shit dies, and it can't happen soon enough, but when he dies, I doubt there are going to be any of the real tears that happened in my household. Because no one cares about our pedophile president as a person because he's the definition of what a piece of shit human is. He lies, he's racist, he's sexist, he touches women whenever he wants, wherever he wants, and who knows what he's done to little girls. What a fucking scumbag. I'm sure his family doesn't really care for him that much either, and that's why I don't think there's going to be a ton of tears when he passes away, and if it happens tomorrow, I'm not going to shed one single tear. But like I said over the past few weeks, I've stayed away from talking about politics for a long time, but I can't not say anything anymore and think I'm a good human. And I don't have that much longer with this podcast to tell you how I really feel. So to segue to something else that's not politics or religion, but I'll use some of the same terminology, God, it was such a relief putting it out there that I only have 20 episodes of this podcast left. While it's kind of sad, it's way more exciting to me. I mean, first and foremost, I'm not dragging this thing out into 2027 just because I can make an extra 10 grand by doing it. I'm ending it how I want to do it, and the next 10 episodes are going to be some event episodes, some interviews, and they're going to be great. And then they're going to lead me into my final 10 episodes and prepare for 10 of the best action sports podcasts ever put back to back to back to back to back. You get it. Looking at the potential guest list that I'm going to make happen, I am so excited. And then I'll be relieved. For 10 years, I've stressed about getting an episode out every single Monday. And I won't have to worry about doing that anymore. And really, I've only almost not had an episode come out once. It was my E. Stone episode. E. Stone was the more charismatic host of the Bombhole podcast, and he was the glue to that show in my opinion. I'm sure a lot of folks are going to agree with me that when I say the best Bombhole episodes are when Chris and Ethan were a team together, and unfortunately that's not the case. He's not on the show anymore. He had a substance abuse issue that no one really knew about. And back then, after he committed to doing my show, I spent weeks trying to get a hold of him to get him on the podcast, and I was relentless. But in the drug world, not being available is a thing, and Ethan wasn't available. So after 20 calls plus text messages letting him know that I was screwed if I didn't interview him, I got him to record on a Sunday afternoon. I edited all Sunday night, and I put an episode out the next Monday. And while that wasn't ideal, I had no idea what Ethan was up to, and I couldn't tell throughout the interview. But you know what? He kept his word to me, and he did the interview, and I respect the shit out of that, even if I did have to harass him to do it. And I think about E. Stone all the time, and I hope he's in a much better place, because it felt like after the bomb hole, He was out on an island by himself, and then he just kind of disappeared. Addiction is a crazy beast that I don't totally understand, so I'm not going to have a full-on drug episode on this podcast, although I'd love to do that. My favorite podcast to listen to is called Dopey, the podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit, where they talk about all kinds of war stories, they call it, of different crazy shit that happened in the drug world. And that's so interesting for me. But I could never really do that because I've never lived that lifestyle before, so I'm not going to have that. But since this episode comes out on April 20th, which is 420, and I have been a pothead, I am going to do a podcast on weed stories for the most part. Well, I couldn't get many athletes to tell stories because they were afraid of what it would do to their image and it could take away from the $400 that they're getting each month. I was able to find some great stories by talking to characters that I've met over the years in the snow industry and in life. So you're listening to the weed episode, and while some names have changed, all the stories are as real as it gets. And since I never was able to do a full month of weed episodes in April 2020 because of the pandemic, I do have this 420 episode that I'm stoked on. Before we get into it, I need to thank you for listening. And I should have mentioned this weeks ago, but if you have a great weed story to tell me, email me a summary of it to mike@thepowellmovement.com. And if it sounds like it's something that's laugh out loud funny or I'm on the edge of my seat the whole time, I'll call you, we'll record the story, and then we'll put it into a future show. Because I want it to be audience participation as well. It hasn't been for 480 episodes. I might as well put some audience stories into the last 20, but if you don't have any for me, I don't care. What else do I have for you here? Please tell a friend about the show. While I'm not really concerned about growth at this point, I do want your friends to have the best content in snow, and in my not so humble opinion, you found it here with the Powell Movement, and your friends will have 480 episodes, of which 475 are awesome. There are like 5 ones that I don't like, and I'll call that out probably towards the end of the podcast, but know that the 475 out of the 480 I think are great listens, and I think you'll enjoy them as well. And if you're a potential sponsor listening to the show and you're like, damn, I missed the opportunity to pay this guy for 500 weeks. Well, there's still 20 weeks left to pay me. I've got some banger episodes that are going to come out the last 10 weeks. You're going to want to be a part of them. So you can reach me at mike@thepowellmovement.com if you want to talk about podcast sponsorship and reaching 10,000 people who buy skis and snowboards every season. You can do that right here with me, and then I'm going away. But if not, all good. I'm fine with that. I'm not out here searching for sponsors anymore. I'm just putting together great content for you and for my final 2 sponsors who have been with me for almost a decade. Thank you to Elan Skis and Outdoor Research for the continued support. Now it's time to head down a foggy memory lane and tell some weed stories for the 420 episode. All right, so I'm going to start this one out with a story I've told a couple times on the podcast over the past 10 years, but it's one of my unfortunate favorite stories. So this takes us back to 2000. After 2 years of living in Vail, snowboarding every day, I blew out my knee. I moved back to Washington, D.C. I had an ACL reconstruction from an amazing doctor with the Washington football at the time, and his amazing surgery turned into an infected knee that would haunt me for the rest of my life. But while I was going through surgeries to clean out the infection and a lot of rehabilitation time, I found a job online for a K2 job, driving a van and trailer, ski shop to ski shop and skate park to skate park up and down the East Coast. And I was like, I have to get that job. And while getting the job is another story, I told myself there was no way anyone else was going to get that job. I was going to make that job mine, and I did. It was incredible. I wasn't selling anything for K2. I was giving clinics, I was doing demos, and I was giving away free shit. It was the best job I ever had in my life. Everything was expensible, and when I would stay at a friend's house on the road, I could use that hotel money to take that friend out to like $100 or $150 dinner, so we were eating like kings. I could also take shop employees out on the company dime. It was so sick, and the best part was that I was on East Coast time, and K2 was on Pacific time, so the earliest that I'd ever have a meeting was 11 a.m., which was very doable for me at that time, and I had zero accountability. It was great for a dude that woke up foggy-brained every morning at that time in my life. I will say, while I did have zero accountability, I did work my ass off in that position until I was hired to move up in the company and move in-house to become the skate team manager, which was another dream job. And this is where my weed story begins. And when I think about the skaters on the K2 Pro Skate team, most of them like to smoke weed other than Cesar Mora and Mark Engelhart, and probably another person here and there. But most of them like to smoke weed. And the way they would get their weed when we were traveling is they would ask me to take them to the mall. And I would drop our team off at the mall, and within 45 minutes, they would have a bag of weed and they would be back at the hotel. And I have plenty of fun stories about going to malls and getting weed and getting kicked out of hotels for things. But that's not what I'm going to tell for my 420 weed story. This story is one that I don't really know the end of. I just know my part in the whole story. So I get promoted to team manager of K2 Skates, and I go to my first K2 sales meeting in Whistler in 2001. And when we get to town, I do what everybody told me I needed to do. I went to the grocery store in Whistler Village, and there were people outside of the grocery store selling weed, and I bought a big bag of weed for some loonies and toonies, and I put it in the hotel room, which I thought I was staying in by myself, and I headed out to meet up with the K2 crew. Later, we met up with some of the sales reps for our first dinner, and I guess I was sharing a room with one of the sales reps because one of the K2 Jeffs shows up at dinner, and he walks up to a table of K2 employees, myself included, and we get introduced, and someone was like, "Hey, you're sharing a room with Mike." And Jeff looks at me in front of the whole K2 team, and he has no idea what I do in my personal life or who I am. And he says, "You're the guy I'm sharing a room with?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Nice stash." And I was mortified, but no one said anything. So anyways, the sales meeting goes well. And when it was time to head home, I was getting a ride with a girl who was part of the skate team. And on the way down from Whistler, on the way to the border, we blazed a joint with some of the leftover weed that I had. And Allie, who was driving, was like, "I'm going to get gas at the last gas station before the border. Make sure you get rid of the last of that weed." And I was like, "Good call, Allie. I will take care of that." So we get gas, we use the bathroom, and we do our stuff. We get back in the car, and we're about a mile from the border. And Allie does one last check. She's like, "Hey, Powell, you got rid of that bag of weed, right?" And I was like, "Of course I did." I'm like, "Let me tell you what a cool person I was." And at this time, good weed wasn't everywhere like it is now. And this was really, really good weed, and I didn't want to throw it away, but I had to. Or I thought I had to. So as I was walking towards the trash can, I see a car, and the back window was cracked open a little bit, and I was like, "I'm going to hook this person up." And I dropped the bag of weed through the cracked back window onto the floor of their back seat. Then I headed back to Allie's car, and we're driving towards the border, and I tell her the story. And she's like, "Powell, you're a fucking idiot. That gas station that we were at, that's the last gas station before the U.S. border. And a lot of people are stopping here for snacks and gas and to use the bathroom before they head and wait in a line at the border. So unless that car figured out what I dropped in the back seat, then most likely they went to the border with a big bag of weed on the floor of their back seat." I think back to that all the time, and I feel really bad for it because I'm sure their car stunk, so maybe they smelt it and they were like, "Maybe we should check around." But if they weren't weed smokers, they probably are just like, "Oh, maybe there's a skunk around," or something like that, and they went to the border. And then I guarantee that Border Patrol definitely smelled what was going on there. So hopefully they didn't go to jail. Hopefully I didn't set somebody up, but I don't know. I could have changed somebody's life in a worse way, and that is weed story number one. Right around the time that I was dropping weed into cars into Canada, the French brothers, a pair of identical twins, Mike and Derek French from Minnesota, they were starting to make things happen in their skate career. And what a roller coaster these two have had in their life and times. They were middle-of-the-road pro skaters in the 2000s, and then drugs and alcohol got the best of them for a wild decade. And then they put their lives back together, and they're now positive, contributing members of society today. But what's even crazier than them being positive, contributing members of society is in the skate world, they're bigger today at 43 than they ever were back in their 20s. And I know both of these guys have crazy pasts. I mean, they were tight with Ben Weiss. And if you heard the podcast I did with Ben Weiss, you know how he liked to roll. So as I was scrambling for weed stories for the 420 episode, I was thinking to myself, I wish Ben Weiss was alive so I could talk to him and get a fun story out of him, because Ben always had the best stories and was so good at telling them. But Ben isn't here anymore. But another guy who's great at telling stories and had just as crazy a life as Ben, maybe not just as crazy, but a pretty fucking crazy life, is Mike French. And I was able to get Mike on the line to tell a story that seemed straight out of the movie Half-Baked.
In order to tell you this story, I have to kind of give you the full reboot of why we ended up where we ended up.
Yeah, I would love to hear it, because I know that you and your brother treated me as professionals as much as you could and hid a lot of stuff from me.
Oh, yeah, from everybody. I think Catholic school taught us that, because Catholic school is like, hey, act very professional, do all your bullshit in the shadows type deal. Anyways, we're not like that anymore. I mean, we're a lot more open and just a lot more forthcoming with everything that's happened, I think, because it brought us to where we're at now, which is a much better place in life. But what I think is funny is that my brother, he wants me to tell this story, which is funny because he's like, hey, you mind calling Powell and telling him the story?
I wanted him to.
Well, and I said to him, I said, why the hell don't you? And he's like, I can't talk for 10 minutes. Like, you could talk for an hour about that one story.
But in the grand scheme of things, your brother and me have a closer relationship than you and I have, just because I worked with your brother a lot in the skating realm.
Absolutely.
So I wanted him to get that shine, because you've always gotten more shine than him in skating, but he still wants to defer it to you, because although you're identical twins, he defers to you in some things.
And he knows that I can tell a story. But the funny part is he thinks I'm going to tell the story just normal, but I'm going to give everybody what they want to hear, which is tell it like it was. And I'm going to make sure that Derek is over there going, shit, I should have told the story from my point of view. But the way that I would start this out is the reason why we got stuck where we were at in this situation is because I was in Catholic school till 8th grade. I ended up leaving because they did some foul stuff, talking crap to me. And my mom pulled up. She didn't believe that they treated me like this, but I wasn't home from school yet. And I told her, they're going to keep me after. They're going to lay into me. And I'm telling you, Mom, they talked to me like they shouldn't talk to any other kid. Anyways, long story short, my mom pulls up there and they got me in a chair and they're like, you're never going to be nothing, And it was so funny because my mom comes in, she goes, are you ready to go to a different school? And I said, fuck yeah. And then I got up and we left. And my brother decided to keep going to Catholic school until 8th grade, graduated that 8th grade year, and then went to an all boys Catholic high school, I believe. But Derek decided that he was going to be in student council, and I'll tell you why. When he came from that all boys school to the school I was going to, I was like, well, Derek, I got to show you this girl. And so we walked through the hallways, and I go, there she is. And I pointed at her, and it's, big, tall, beautiful blonde girl with these big blue eyes. And my brother's like in Wayne's World, like, she will be mine. Oh, yes, one day she will be mine. So he decides to join student council because she does. And now he's got these student council friends. So that puts me to where we're at in my story. Why we're with 2 student council guys and 5 other skating rebels, We're all kind of sitting around like, hey, where's the party at? Which really means, hey, how can I go out and meet new girls, or how can I go out and have a good time and possibly get drunk or stoned? That's where we were at in life. I mean, that's really all that happened on the weekends besides skating. And so I believe this was the actual cast of this night. And it was a buddy of ours named Johnson who could actually drive. I think he was a year older than us. I believe Ben Weiss was there. Derek was there. I was there. So there's about, let's say there's 5 to 7 people. And I remember that because we were in a Chevy Blazer that had 5 seats in it, and it was completely filled with 2 people in the penalty box in the back.
Okay.
Well, anyways, we're all sitting around trying to brainstorm, hey, how can we get some weed? And everybody's like, oh, pulls out their little piece of paper or their pocket book that has all the phone numbers in it because we didn't have cell phones back then. And I'll never forget, everybody's calling their people and everybody's dry. Everybody's dry. And I think this was 420, but I can't remember the actual date because of how much I've done to my brain. But we've tried everybody. This comes down to one guy going, hey, I've got this guy's card. I got it. I don't even know where. And I said, let me see that card. And it says, Mr. Nice Guy Weed Sales. And I'm like, who in the fuck went through all that trouble to make a card? I was like, you know what? This is some half-baked shit because this is around that time. And I'm like, whatever, dude. If this works, whatever. Well, dude makes the call. We end up saying, we want to get probably a half ounce of swag at the time. But the trip to go get it, we're all jamming. We're all pumped up. We're laughing. We're having fun. And we're going to meet this guy called the Joker. And I thought this was just the funniest shit ever because, okay, so he said his name was the Joker. And there's a friend of ours named Johnson. And, at the time, he was kind of a pipsqueak. He was like the shorter guy. He was older than us, but he was in student council with Derek. And we're introducing him to this life of like, hey, drive us places. And I'm always doing nefarious stuff. And what was crazy is that we go to get this chronic. And when we get there, he jumps out with my buddy Chris to get this weed because they were sitting up front. And when they do that, this guy that walks up is like kind of like a Neanderthal looking guy, like really big underbite, kind of crazy looking, but also a redhead. And he had this tattoo of a Joker on his arm. And as soon as we pulled up, he was like, yeah, it's me. And shows us the picture of the Joker on his arm. And I just could not stop laughing at this guy. I'm like, really? Is this what we're doing right now? I was like, this guy's going places. And when they got out to talk to the guy went to go hand my buddy the weed, and my buddy was going to hand him the money, and he grabs the money and socks my friend in the face. And when he does that, we all jump out, and it was a bunch of little kids like yelling at a bear. Like none of us wanted to touch him, but my friend's laying on the ground, and we all jump out, and we're like, "Hey, get away from him! Hey!" And all this stuff. And the guy kind of is backing up like, what the hell? What the hell? And as he turns around to go like take off or whatever, we were just all screaming. We didn't want him to keep kicking our friend's ass. And he slowly backed up like a bear would do if you made too many noises. And he just looked really confused and just kind of started taking off, probably because there were 7 kids like yelling at him.
Right.
And as soon as he turned around to walk away, we look and my buddy Chris is in shotgun. He already jumped back up. Brad got in the car to drive and he's holding up the weed going, I got it. And so we all got in the car and we took off. And the best part about this story is that after we scored this terrible weed filled with seeds that my buddy almost lost his life for, at 3:00 in the morning, we ended up hearing a story from my brother a week later. He goes, you wouldn't believe you showed up at the orientation at Papa John's Pizza. And we're like, who? He goes, the fucking Joker. He goes, needless to say, he won't be coming back tomorrow. Besides that, there's like a lot more stories that involved, waiting in a parking lot for hours just to try and get some weed. Now you can just go right to a dispensary.
When it was illegal, I mean, how much was the most you ever saw in one place?
Oh, when I was 17, I got popped with a half a pound, and I never got in trouble for it because they were going after a guy that was selling pounds or whatever. And I can't remember how I met the guy, but I ended up buying a pound to give to my friend Joe. Well, this other guy's name was Joe. And what was funny is they call my mom, they tell her, hey, your son's involved in some drug trafficking. And if you bring the marijuana here to the station and bring him in, we'll go ahead and save you all the trouble of coming to raid your house and all this stuff. And I don't know how she found out that I had that in my closet, but back then we had house phones. So I think she might have just picked up the house phone when I got a call and found out I had a half a pound in my closet. I had already left to go sell the other half of the pound. And when I came back, it was gone. And my mom had this crazy look on her face. And I said, what did you do? And, this guy had like 40 pounds, I think I saw. And that was like brickweed, though. And it was just nuts to see. But at the same time, when my mom said, hey, we got to go down to the police department, I was like, you can. And I just remember taking off and then getting followed by like 14 cops. And I just pulled over. They brought me into the police department and they were like, well, you can give us the name of the guy and save yourself a lot of trouble. I just pressed the I'll kill myself button. It's like, hey, don't push too hard. I'll kill myself. I'm not telling anybody. And it was the smartest thing I could think of at the time, but I didn't want to get anybody else in trouble. I didn't want to get in trouble. And seeing that much weed, I knew that guy was definitely doing things that were a lot bigger than what I was doing at the time. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to ever try and get somebody hemmed up for my mistakes.
It's time for my first sponsor break. And I'm going to start with longtime sponsor Elan Skis. And if you haven't skied on an award-winning ripstick yet, you're missing out on something that ski brands have long said wasn't an option. A lightweight ski that powers through anything and truly rips. It's game-changing. And Elan, while they've been around for 80 years, have been changing the game of modern skiing by doing things like adding side cut to straight skis with the Elan SCX, which changed the whole industry. They're building skis by skiers in a place with ski culture in the Slovenian Alps. And most importantly, they're supporting local shops. When the competition goes and starts selling direct, Elan sticks by their retailers who have been by them since the beginning. Elan is just built differently, and they innovate with a purpose. And that's to make your on-snow experience better, easier, and more fun. It's this approach that brought you the Ripstick and all of their award-winning skis. And when you're in the market for a new pair, visit an Elan retailer, demo a pair of their skis, and you'll know why Elan has built a cult following here in the States. To find out more about all the skis or to find an Elan dealer, head on over to elanskis.com. Now it's time to jump back into the podcast. As I was putting together this podcast, I had to make a call to Cam Hoffman over at Pit Viper for some podcast research. And while I was talking to Cam, I asked about getting a weed story, and he delivered. I'm pretty good. I'm just recording a 420 podcast episode.
A 420 podcast? Heck yeah.
Do you have any crazy weed stories?
I do have kind of a crazy weed story, actually.
Tell me your weed story. I'd love to hear it because I'm cobbling together an episode right now. So we might as well jump into Cam Hoffman's crazy weed story. We're jumping into the podcast right now. It wasn't planned, but now we are doing it. Cam, tell me your crazy weed story.
I was at my dealer's house. This was in high school. And he had this little desk nook right at the top of the stairs. And he also had a really big bong. And I hit the really big bong really hard. And about 10 seconds later, I passed out and I fell off the stool I was sitting on, and I fell onto my back and I slid headfirst down the stairs all the way to the bottom and hit my head at the door on the bottom of the stairs.
Short but sweet with Cam, and now I'm going to a guy who I will call Bob Landers for the purpose of this podcast. Bob is a dear friend of mine. I've known him since high school. We lived in Colorado together, and we snowboarded every day for a couple of seasons, and I really, really love this guy. He's not only a snowboarder, he's a world-class green thumb that was known for some of Vail Valley's finest back in the late 90s. Vail Valley's and the whole Summit County area. I feel like a lot of people know the flavor of Bob Landers. He's also got one of the most stylish methods that I've ever seen in person. And Bobby also has some great stories. Here are 3 of them.
When I graduated college, I moved to DC and I worked in a primarily gay hotel, and I was a valet. And at that time, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had some really good connections. So I was probably connected to some of the best weed because of the Grateful Dead tour and that area in Northern Virginia. So when I was working at the hotel to make a little bit of side money, I would usually try to sell a little weed here and there. A couple times people would come in, and they'd really like my shit and come back and stay. And then they'd stay for, I was there for probably 4 months, and people would come back and forth and always look me up. So anyway, this European lady really liked my weed, and she stayed for probably about a month. So I kept selling her weed as a valet. I'd go up to her room and sell a little bit of weed. And every time I did it, she'd be like, man, I just wish I could get this back in Europe, And I was like, oh, I could get a bunch of you want. And she's like, yeah, I'd really like, more than an ounce. And I was like, it's going to cost some money. It's really expensive weed. Of course, I was making outrageous money on it. And I sold her probably like an ounce and a half. And I was like, if you're going to send it back, make sure you package it up, do it right. And I was like, okay, cool. So anyway, the next day I come into work, my manager's at the front, and he's like, come here. He's like, I just walked in the office this morning and it reeked so bad of really strong weed. He's like, I think one of the people upstairs is trying to send this weed back to Europe. She had come downstairs to the front desk at the hotel and tried to package it up and send it to Europe, but she didn't use any kind of packaging, So the smell smelled so bad.
She just threw it in the bag you had?
So she got, basically my manager's like, I can't put this in the mail. And he turns to me, he's like, do you want it? Because he didn't smoke weed. And I was like, hell yeah, I'll take that weed. So I walked away with that weed. And then this is another good one in that hotel, in the same hotel. I was really sketchy, and I was doing the same thing working in the hotel. And I got to know this other young couple, and it was interesting. My manager, and remember, this is all gay hotel, so everybody's super friendly. It was like the friendliest place I've ever worked. And my manager was extremely effeminate gay, and he was super nice, and he was just always trying to help out people that were having trouble. We were in the center of DC, and so there's a lot of people, vagrants outside, and being a valet, I would get in contact with them. Well, so at one point, we met this really sweet girl who, her and her brother were out on the streets because they had a fire in their house in DC. And so they didn't have any money. They lost their credit cards, lost everything. So my boss felt really bad. And he's like, listen, normally we don't pay cash for hotel rooms, but he's like, I'm going to set these people up for like a month and they'll pay weekly cash. As long as they pay ahead of time for the week, we're going to let it slide. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And he's like, treat them kind of good. So I got to know them. They seemed like really nice people. And like within the first couple of days, the brother wanted to smoke down with me. We got to talking, same thing as it always does. I start selling him some weed and had a really good relationship with this guy. And he was like one of my favorite, because at work then as a valet, I could go up to the room and smoke down at work and then go back to work. So it was like a perfect situation for me. And since I lived there for like over a month, it was sweet. And so after a while, I got to get really close to him and her. One of the things I noticed about her being a valet, I was always in the elevator, and she was constantly either about to take a bath or wet from a shower or a bath. And I really did notice the large amount of men that were coming into their hotel room. Like, it just seemed very strange to me.
Okay.
Just how many people were asking like for this room number and asking where it was. I would bring them up and I'd show them a room. It was really peculiar. Just thought that was strange. And then one day I go into work and my boss is like, the manager of the whole place is like, listen, I just found out that couple that I thought I was taking care of, that was a pimp. And that was his prostitute. He's like, they've been working in this hotel for over a month. He's like, the police are involved. They're up there. They're talking to him. He's like, so that's fucked up. And I immediately was like, shit, fuck, shit, shit, shit. I've been selling him weed and going up that room like every day, getting high in there, even telling people that work there, like, these guys are so cool. I hang out with them all the time. So nothing ended up happening. I got super lucky on that one. And then another story. This one's interesting. So let's see. So my first year of college, I don't think you know this one. This is pretty funny. I went to university. I probably shouldn't say.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you went.
All right, so I went to the University of Northern Colorado, which is way up there in them sticks, and I'm coming from Virginia, and my whole life I've sold weed. So my first, year of school, I knew I wasn't going to afford it. I didn't make much money working. There's no way my parents weren't giving me shit. So I knew right away when I went to college, I was going to sell weed. It was going to happen no matter what, because I like to smoke it. I was going to get it. So within like the first week of school, I met a really cool chick that she told me her boyfriend lived off campus and had like a really good connection. And I thought that was awesome because I lived in an all boys dorm that was set up so that it was like 3 floors of all guys. We all shared the same bathroom on the same floor. It was horrible. And because I was an arts major, I was forced to be with like kind of the stranger crew of the college, I would say. Most of the people in the arts majors were very weird. And I didn't really gist with them. I kind of really wanted to just go snowboarding in Colorado. So that whole school was just a ways to a means. And so in the process, my roommate was this big fat kid that just like played video games and didn't do anything, and he wasn't active at all, and I just couldn't stand him. He drove me crazy. So anyway, I got this connection, got the good weed, and it was started selling to the school. And I'm in a place where I really didn't enjoy, so I spent most of my time on the other side of campus, where it was like more kids that are in marketing or other majors. There were much better accommodations, were much cooler dudes, so I never hung out with my place. And I was there for probably 2 weeks, and I get a call from the school administration, and they wanted to talk to me. And at that time, I got to know some other people, and they had gotten the same phone call. And I knew when they got that call, something bad shit was going to hit the fan,
Uh-huh.
I figured I was busted. I didn't realize that the whole phone system in the college was set up so that they could listen in anytime they wanted. You weren't free. It was their phone system.
Oh, no.
So they were able to record anything I did. And I did everything over the phone, especially to the guy that was off the campus. So every time I got some weed, I would call him. I would go off campus. And I thought, I'm leaving the campus. This is all good, And then I had a place that I hid it actually on campus, like in the woods. And then I had some at my house that I'd grab. But I thought I was being all genius, no one would ever catch me.
You always took every precaution, whether you were growing or anything.
Oh,
if something,
totally.
you would tell me Mike, if the cops were to come to this house right now, I can push a button and every piece of air in this house will be sucked out and there'll be no smell, right?
It's true. Exactly. It's true. I choose at least to hide things outside of my house, especially in college. So I'd have I had a mountain bike. I was big into mountain bikes. So I could bike places far away and hide things and leaves and stuff. And it was much safer. I'd sleep much better at night. And I didn't even realize my roommate was as lame as he was, but I would come home, and I'm coming from Virginia where the weed wasn't that great at the time, that when I went to the hotel, that was after I graduated and got to know much more heady people. But I'm coming from, not the greatest weed, and Colorado has amazing weed. So I would come home with these bags of weed, and I would pick the sweetest, juiciest nugget out of it and keep it. And I'd come home and show it to my roommate because I'd be all fucked up, it's first year of college.
And you love weed. You love weed.
Oh, love it, man. And that's why I got into selling it, because I knew I was going to need it. It came down to the fact that I had another partner that I worked with in college, and he really made the money. And I would always turn the weed into just more weed so I could smoke more of it. I never really turned it into cash. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But when I say you love weed, you love looking at a beautiful nug, you love watching it grow, and you love the whole process, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even to this day, it's part of my life. And it's really important to have quality weed. I feel like I have a taste that other people can't, I notice some people that I sell weed to that don't even taste the difference between this and that. And it surprises me how they don't know the small nuances of sweet versus a gasoline flavor, and just what a shitty bag of weed is and what a good bag of weed is. Most people don't know. They just want to get high. I find that's kind of sad. Yeah, sommelier of weed is what you might say. I feel like that, when people talk about, is it indica or is it sativa, I'm really only interested in how does it taste and what's the flavor. That's what it really comes down to. The effects are second to that.
You're the biggest connoisseur friend that I have, but not just a connoisseur, the science of growing it from small scale for your personal use to a long time ago, probably bigger scale.
Oh, yes. Yes. And so, again, we're getting back to that story. I was basically, let's see where we were at. We were selling weed, and I got called in. by the school.
Yep.
The school brings me in. I dressed up really nicely, cleaned my act up. I actually got a haircut at college. I had really long hair, so I was pulling it all back. I think I tied it up in a bun. Did that whole thing, which I never do. Went in there, and as soon as the guy started talking, I basically started tearing up. Because for me, I thought I was going to get kicked out of school, to be honest with you. I was like, oh, fuck, it's over. I fucked up. My parents are going to freak out.
Yeah.
Luckily, University of Northern Colorado is such a shitty school and they needed money badly from us East Coasters, and people were dropping out like crazy because they didn't really you didn't need much from that to get in that school. So they were willing to really let it slide as long as I promised. They said they had tapes of every sale I had done, and as long as I promised to never smoke weed again and keep it clean. And one of the deals in the whole thing that I signed was that I'm never allowed to talk to my roommate again. Right there, I knew exactly what happened. You know, I knew that there was no fucking tapes, that was all fucking bullshit, that my roommate
Sold
and maybe
you
not
out.
right there in the spot. My roommate sold me the fuck out, you know, and I knew it. It killed me because I was like, oh, now I'm going to see him all the time. I can't say a word to him, and he fucked me so hard, but it's not going to matter. So I ended up being kicked out of that section of the campus, which was like the dorms, all guys. And the guy was like, we're going to have to move you somewhere far away. So they moved to the other side, which was like, they called the towers in Greeley,
Okay.
which are like, you really have some nice places to stay. There, each room has a bathroom. There's 2 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms in each unit. And you had TV, because this is generally all the seniors and juniors that already had their shit together, you know?
Yep.
So I wasn't surrounded by freshmen. I was surrounded by really cool guys. These guys had way better connections with drugs and stuff. So they basically put me in like the best situation I could possibly be in. There was girls and guys on that floor, and the girls were super hot, you know, like it totally changed my life. And I could have been stuck with those dorms with that fat loser guy that wouldn't do anything, never left the house to play video games at that time. And I got moved, and they thought they were screwing me, just set me all up, you know, for the rest of the year, basically. It was awesome.
That's amazing. And you nailed it. I'm going to use all of them if you're cool with it.
Yeah, whatever.
Because I was thinking I was going to have trouble doing this episode. I figured you would give me like 3 minutes of stuff, which would be great. And then I figured I'd need like 20 other people to give me 3 minutes. But you just did like 12 minutes, and they're all awesome. All those stories are perfect.
I got a better one.
Okay, well, let's go with your next one.
Dude, this one's awesome because it's... And I wanted to tell you because I was there, you know? The problem is it's Molly. Is that okay?
I mean, do you want to call out for doing Molly on the I mean, is it weed involved too? Or is...
Gone. He's gone. We don't need to call him.
Yeah.
But this is one of the best stories. Let me just tell
We're
you.
gonna hear it. We're gonna hear it.
Let me tell you. This is the funniest story I've ever heard drug-wise or anything.
And you were there.
And I was there. I experienced the whole thing.
All right, I want to hear it.
So back in the day, and I'll keep this random so you can't tell where it was, but back in the day, I worked at a very popular ski resort called Vail, Colorado. And I worked at a really popular snowboard shop that was privately owned by a really cool family. And at the end of every season, we do something fun. And it was usually like go to a small resort or do something like go to a casino, whatever. With this situation, we decided to go to Jamaica. We had a friend that said it was totally cool. He has a house in Jamaica. He can put us all up. So all the people that worked at that ski shop decided we'd all go up to Jamaica and rent this house that was given to us for like nothing. I think it was like all of us for like 10 people. We paid like $200 for total. It was crazy. So we all decided to make it like 12 nights. You know, we're like, let's just do a big one because it's so cheap. And so it was me, a bunch of my friends from the shop, basically, and my girlfriend. And so we get out there the first night, and on our flight out there, my buddy was like, I'm going to take a bunch of things with us. One of the things is Molly. And I was like, that's probably a bad idea. I was like, we're going to have to go through customs. So it's a little different than leaving state to state. And I was like, I don't think you should probably bring that shit. I mean, you probably get it there. It's Jamaica, And so he's like, okay, whatever. And we get this whole group together. We get on the plane. We're flying it out. And we start talking. And my buddy basically says, hey, I fucked up. I brought that shit with us. I'm going to eat it before we go through customs. And I was like, well, did you bring a lot? And he's like, yeah, I brought a lot. And I was like, you probably should just throw it away because we got a lot of shit going on. We have to go through customs in Jamaica. We had to figure out where we're staying, all this crazy shit. So anyway, my buddy's like, whatever. He takes it. Okay. So we get to customs, like the beginning of customs, and my buddy can barely keep his shit together. We're trying to like hold him up. He's falling down. We get through customs. I don't know how he made it through. We weren't drug tested at all. He could have kept it all in his pocket. We get through the customs and everything. We get in a bus, this van that they're going to drive us to our resort. And it was all pre-set up, So we get in this bus. We're riding with the people, and my buddy, he wanted to pull over. He needed matches. And I was like, all right, we can stop at this place. We're getting some beers anyway. So we stopped. He gets some matches, and he goes inside. And they were giving Jamaican prices. And the lady tells him it's like $500 for the matches. And my buddy loses his shit. He's like, $500. And he starts screaming at the lady. And then we didn't know this lady, the store they were at, was friends with the bus driver. So the bus driver now we're upsetting like somebody in the bus driver's family, basically. And so we get kicked out of there, and the bus driver's super mad at this point. So he brings us back to the resort, and he tells the people at the resort, these guys are out of hand. was losing his mind at this point. And so we're like, all right, we want to party. It's like 10 o'clock at night. They told us there's this beach party. So we get to the resort and we're like, we're going to get our stuff together. We'll head out. We'll go out to the beach party. So in the process, we go to the beach party. We knew our boss was going to be at the beach party as well later. So we're like, this is going to be awesome. We're going to have so much fun. So we get to the beach party. We're having a good time. Our buddy was so fucked up on the Molly, we decided that it wasn't a good idea. He comes to the beach party, that maybe he should just try to lay down and get some sleep, Yeah. That was a really stupid move on our part. He had been drinking and we thought he would go to sleep. He was acting like he was tired, So we told him just stay in bed and just be cool.
And this is the biggest loose cannon we know.
Biggest loose cannon. This guy, and when he drinks, it's way bad.
Yeah, real
out
bad.
of control.
He's not here anymore, unfortunately, because of that.
He passed away, sadly enough.
Yeah.
But he definitely had a good time while I was here.
Yeah, he did.
And the house that we were at was like a compound. And it basically had a guy that, and everywhere you go in Jamaica, especially in the grill area, they're jerking chicken on every corner. It's like a very common thing. And so the place that we stayed at, some of the guys that stayed there were actually jerking chicken on a regular basis on the corner. So we told one of them when we left, hey man, we've got a friend upstairs that's fucked up. We'll give you some money. Just keep your eye on, what's going on. Make sure he doesn't leave. If he comes down, he might be freaked out, So we didn't think much of it. We took off. We're having fun. While we're at that party, at the beach party later on, our boss shows up from the ski shop and he's like, hey, I just saw your buddy. What the hell happened? And we're like, what are you talking about? We just saw like an hour ago. What are you talking about? We left him. He's like, oh, he's covered in blood. We saw him on the middle of the street because we were driving to go see your house and we couldn't figure out where you lived. We were on some back road and we almost hit him because he was running across the street. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, we put him in our car and took him up to your house. And he's on the floor at your house right now. And he's bleeding all over the floor in the tile. We told him to stay there. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So all of us leave the party because we were so worried about our buddy. Get in the car, go back to the Jamaican condo house. And he's laying on the floor, literally in a big pile of blood. And he'd been cut all over his body. There was like no place on him wasn't cut up. And he was all messed up looking. And we're like, what happened? And he's like, dude, I woke up. And this is what we figured out after several days. But he put together a little bit that night. But he woke up and he realized nobody was there. Didn't know where he was. So he went out to the front. He said he saw a big black man jerking some chicken, like roasting chicken in the front. And the guy started walking towards him and he got scared. So he started running. So he jumped over the fence behind our place and kept running. It was nighttime. So he kept running into fences and barbed wire all around because everybody's gardening there. It's like a big, how they eat their food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We destroyed so many gardens in the process, trying to run away and running through all these fences. And so we finally find him, bring him back to the house. We're like, he's covered in blood. He's all beat up. Thank God, like aloe is like a native plant there. So he's covering himself with it constantly the whole rest of the vacation. But he wasn't right for probably 4 days. He couldn't go out in the sun because he was so beat up. But then the funniest part was that for the rest of the week we were there, I don't know how many of them were true, but people would show up at our house on a regular basis going, hey, you owe us some money. Your buddy destroyed our gardens in our backyard, and we literally were like, had to pay these people and they would show up on a regular basis, be like, and I think they're all talking to each other and be like, you should go over to his house, you get some money, or tell him that white boy destroyed your fucking garden, It was the funniest experience I've ever been through with that kid. It was so wild card for sure. Gonna miss him.
I miss him too. I will tell a little story while we're going. We were on a ski chalet trip once. Right after college, I was working for Ski Chalet, and we went out to Aspen. His brother works for a government agency where they carry guns, and for some reason, this is like in 2000, before 9/11, he had a bunch of ammunition in his backpack, and we were on a little puddle jumper that's going from Denver to Aspen, and the overhead compartment gets opened, and a spray of bullets falls down onto the ground, rolls down the aisle of the plane, and we're like, holy shit. They're like, we found some ammunition. We need to know whose these are right now. We all knew it was because knew about it beforehand. He actually let us know that. So we were like, holy shit, this is. But me and someone else checked our luggage under his name just to like be fast at the airport. So all three of us got pulled off the airplane. They did nothing to us and they put us right back on the airplane and we flew to Aspen and it was no big deal. But at least 8 bullets fell from the overhead compartment onto the floor in an airplane and we got away with it.
That's so to get away with it. I mean, like I remember I didn't graduate with him. He went to McLean because he pantsed the girl and we went to pants her. He pulled her underwear off at the same time. And she was morbidly like, she couldn't go back to school. You know what I mean? He had to be kicked out of our school. He graduated from McLean. He never graduated from our high school.
Yeah, crazy. I'm going to beep his name out of everything, but He was an amazing character. Unfortunately, alcohol is it's the weed episode. And if you're going to pick between weed and alcohol, our friend, which I'm going to bleep his name out, he loved alcohol more than anything. And unfortunately, at 49, it ended up killing him, the side effects of drinking that much. And he drank as much as he could whenever he could. And it was a really sad thing at the end. So smoke weed if you're going to make the choice of alcohol or weed, I think is probably the best thing. And don't take a shit ton of Molly before you fly to Jamaica.
Yeah, no doubt. It'll be there for you. It's like bringing sand to the beach.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start out with Outdoor Research. I could spend a lot of this ad telling you all the tech and why Outdoor Research is better, but know that in the 1980s and the early 90s, Outdoor Research built a reputation on functional quality outdoor gear that pushed the limits of innovative possibilities. And those who were function first were all about OR gear, because it was and it still is built better, and Outdoor Research is still pushing those limits of innovation. This year, the outerwear focuses on 3 new collections: the Cloud Chaser for backcountry and the Powderverse and Hemisphere collections for freeride, as well as some staples in the line like the Snow Crew collection. These outerwear systems are styled for and by athletes like Mark Adma, Troy Podnelsak, Zoe Aitken, snowboarder Neil Provo, and others, and that's why this outerwear collection not only looks so good, but each piece is more functional than ever, and they're all you're going to need in any conditions. To find out more about the new collection, head on over to outdoorresearch.com. While it's sad that our friend is gone and we could talk about the dangers of alcohol, this is the weed episode, and the only way you'll die from weed is choking on an edible. Anyway, my next story is with the legendary K2 ski model DJ Mullet. Mullet was the big bone guy that K2 put in green spandex and did a Lang Girl poster parody ad with. Anyway, K2 hired Mullet to DJ at the signature event at the SIA trade show celebrating K2's 50th anniversary. It was going to be an awesome party, but it almost didn't happen. It was like the 50-year anniversary of K2, and we had put a ton of money into creating this amazing trade show booth that was 3 stories tall. It had a water tower, and we were going to put a DJ booth up on top of the water tower. We were going to bring DJ Mullet out, who is the feature of the ad campaign that year, where there was a Lang Girl ad campaign, but DJ Mullet was the Lang Girl in the K2 boots. We launched the boot. We had the big party at the trade show. Mullet was going to fly out, and at about 10 o'clock in the morning, the day of the party, I call Mullet and I'm like, "Hey Mullet, how's things going?" And you're like, "Dude, I think we have a problem. Take it from there."
I think I called you from the airport.
Yeah, maybe from the airport. I don't remember.
Yeah, but okay, so 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing laundry, I'm packing, I'm basically sitting in the basement just fucking taking bong hits. And I hear this pounding on the fucking front door. And you also have to realize that my roommate at the time was doing heroin. A lot of heroin, and he was letting his little brother stay in his room, and his little brother brought his girlfriend along, and unbeknownst to me, they were up to some nefarious fucking shenanigans. And 2 days before, one of our friends had been pounding on the back door trying to find my roommate's little brother because he owed him money. And so I thought it was him, and I'm like, dude, is he pounding on the door again? I'm gonna have to take care of this. So I start walking back to my room to grab my pistol because I'm like, dude, you gotta stop. There was a lot of stuff going on, drug wise, that I wasn't around for because I was gone most of the time. I was growing weed at a location that was not here.
Yeah.
So I had a bunch of weed in the house. I just cut down a crop, and I had fucking trash bags full of fucking shake, huge trash bags, 4 or 5 of them. And so I run upstairs, and my roommate's passed out on the couch, and I'm like, dude, did somebody just pound on the door? He's like, yeah, I think so. But he's nodding out. He's sitting right there, and he doesn't even know if somebody was knocking on the door. So as I'm going back to my room to go grab my pistol to answer the door and be like, yo, motherfuckers, knock this off, I hear the fucking pounding, and it's cop knocks, open the door, search warrant, Redmond police. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to answer the door with a pistol, but I didn't have a peephole, so I couldn't see who was on the other side of the door. So I just yanked the door open and be like, what the fuck? And it was the Redmond SWAT team who greeted me. AR-15 fucking pointed at my face. They're like, search warrant, and they all just started swarming in. One guy grabs me, starts to handcuff me, and pushes me up against the blinds And as he pushes me up against the blinds, they separate, and I can see out into the fucking yard. And I'm like, dude, there are cops fucking everywhere, man. And they're all swarming in. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? They're like, are you Todd Okerman? And I'm like, yeah. Why are you asking me that? Like, I'm thinking I'm getting busted for weed. And you have to realize weed had just become legal like 3 weeks before. This was in January of like 2014.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, weed's legal, but I had way too much weed for it to be legal, you know? So I'm in handcuffs. I'm in sweatpants and a T-shirt. And they drag me outside in front of all my neighbors. And they're like, you know why we're here, right? I'm like, fuck, I don't have a clue. And I'm thinking it's for weed. Which, sure enough, my roommate's little brother and his girlfriend were going to daycares. They were sitting outside of daycares waiting for single moms to go in there without their purse. And they would either break into the car or they would just like open the door if it was unlocked. And they would steal the purse. And so they were going around and buying shit at like Best Buy and then selling it on the internet, like on Craigslist. And the cops were following them for like almost a year. And they followed them to my place. They saw me go to get some coffee. And this whole time that they're on our street and they're watching my house, I always was paying attention back then. Like fucking, I'm paranoid because I was selling weed and I was growing weed. So I was like always watching out for like cars that shouldn't be there, cars that have been there forever, people sitting in their cars, suspicious shit. I didn't see them at all. And they saw me go get coffee and come back. They had a search warrant. Should we perform the search or should we wait? And they're like, no, we're gonna do the search right now. So fortunately they did it when I was there because they were about ready to kick the door in. Like they had one of those battering rams.
Yep.
If I hadn't opened the door, I think they were going to say one more time, I think is what they told me. And then they were just going to bust in the door. So if I had already left, that door would have been wide open for that whole time I was in Denver. So I was pretty lucky for that.
Yeah.
And it's the first time I've ever really been in handcuffs and let out of them, but not at the police station when they took me out of the cuffs.
You let them know of your situation, like, hey, I've got to be on a flight in 2 hours and you guys are wasting my time almost?
Yeah. At first I was like, so what is going on? They told me a story about my roommate's brother and his girlfriend that were stealing from everybody. I was like, well, I have nothing to do with that. And they're like, well, how do we know that? I go, because I fucking have nothing to do with that. So am I under arrest? I'm not under. I shouldn't be under arrest because I don't even know what the fuck is going on. But I have to be at the airport because I have to go model. The guy's like, yeah, right. And then I had all those posters of me in the ski boots, the Lang posters, and they were under the couch. And so they saw that and they're like, oh shit, you're a model? I'm like, fuck yeah, man. I'm an international male model. They're like, oh, can we get one of those posters? I'm like, fuck no. I'm not giving you a poster. Fuck that. Dude, I don't need that shit up in a fucking police station. Like, you guys all laughing at me all the time. Like, nope. So I'm like, dude, I have to leave. If I'm not under arrest, then I need to get my fucking bags packed and I need to be out the door in like fucking 15, 20 minutes. And so they gave me an officer. It was a woman. She was assigned to follow me around the house because I wasn't allowed to just like walk around unsupervised. Because they're still searching the house, they're looking for stolen goods. So I was just trying to get out of there before they found the pound of buds, and then been like, oh, dude, what is this? So I'm scrambling to get everything packed. I got to grab everything out of my fucking dryer in the basement, and then I got to go upstairs, pack. I got to go back downstairs to basically lock everything up, turn my computer off. And my bong is sitting on my fucking desk, and this cop who's like following me around, I just look at it, I'm like, hey, I got to go fly. And I'm like really anxious right now, and I don't like flying anyways. So is it okay if I take a couple bong hits? She's like, well, it's legal. It's your house. I can't stop you. Like, okay. Dude, I think I smoked out the whole basement. Like, there was a cloud of smoke. I think I took about 7 bong hits before she was finally like, I think that's enough. Like, you're going to get me in trouble with my supervisor.
But you were able to get to the airport, come away unscathed. You smoked weed in front of cops. They found a plethora of illegal items at your house that they totally ignored. And you happened to have roommates that were doing shit that you didn't know about. And that really sucked for you. But you still were able to kill that party and then went on a DJ Mullet world tour.
Yeah. What happened was I left my house and it was fucking pouring rain, and I had to walk like a block and a half up to the bus. I don't know if the light rail was there. I think I might have to take the bus all the way to the airport. I can't remember. But I remember I got to the airport and I called you and I was like, hey, listen, because I was fucking worried that they were going to find all that bud in the freezer, and then they're going to be like, well, they know where I'm going. Like, I'm going to the airport. I'm going to Denver. Or like, they don't need to figure out what airline I'm going to. They just need to figure out which ones are going to Denver, you know?
Yep.
If they're not at the airport in SeaTac, then they might be at the airport and fucking, like, I was all paranoid.
So you didn't feel safe till you showed up at the trade show?
Until I got off that plane in Denver, I did not feel like I was waiting for the hammer to come down. Like, I was waiting for cops to just show up at the gate and arrest me. Because I had too much stuff for it to be legal. But, I mean, it's like, I wasn't stealing from fucking single moms, you know? But I just remember I got to the hotel, and I couldn't really tell you exactly what was going on. I think I just was like, hey, look, my house got raided by a SWAT team. I'm on my way, but I don't know if they're going to arrest me when I fucking get off the plane or before I get on the plane. So I guess I'll see you when I see you.
I'm going to close the 420 episode out with another one of my stories. One where I not only put my life at risk, but also the life of one of my coworkers. And I was able to chat with legendary Southeast sales rep Wade Whitman to talk about what happened that night in Louisville in 2008. That night was crazy, right?
Absolutely. Well, you remember how the day started, right?
It was the day we went to the stadium.
It's the day we went to the stadium. We were there for the Play It Again show, right, in Louisville.
And we got to take batting practice there, or they put us on home plate and said that we could have a couple swings. But the whole deal was we weren't allowed to run the bases. Do you remember that?
And you ran the fucking bases and got us in trouble. Yeah.
I was like, I've got to stand out here. And if I make contact, I am definitely running these bases. Especially when they told us like 10 times that we couldn't run the bases because a minor league team was going to play there in a couple days or something like that. I'm like, I am definitely running the bases.
They were super explicit. Yeah, super explicit. Don't run the fucking bases.
And they were on the stadium PA going, guy in the green polo shirt, please get off of the baseline.
They pretty much yanked you off the field, bro.
Yep. And so that was pretty awesome.
And I'm pretty sure, did we end up at a strip joint?
I'm going to say we did, but I don't remember if we did.
I think we did.
Okay. So we were in Louisville. We get out of a strip joint. It's got to be 2 a.m.
It's late.
And I'm like, hey, I want a bag of weed. And I don't even think you smoked weed, but you're like, I'll go with you.
No. Yeah, I can go with you. Yeah, hang out.
And so I find this cabbie right outside. He was like 60-year-old dude, it seemed like, or in my memory he was.
Yep.
And I was like,
absolutely.
I was like, hey, man, do you know where we can get some weed? He's like, I got you, boys. Get in. And we just drove to the hood, right?
Yeah, it took shit, dude. It seemed like we were in that car for 30 minutes at least.
We were in the car for 30 minutes, but then we got to the hood. And do you remember what he said when we got there and he went in?
Yeah. Doc, get on the floorboard. Is what he said.
And I think I was in the front seat laying on the front floor. You were on the back laying on the back floor. And I feel like we were in the car for 20 minutes waiting for this guy to come out with the bag of weed at like 3 a.m. in a project in Louisville.
Yeah, we were parked next to a dumpster. And yeah, he basically said, get on the floorboard or you're going to get killed. If they see you, is what he said, you know, for the most part. I'm thinking to myself, fucking Powell, dude, what the fuck did you just get us into?
And I feel like I remember apologizing to you from the front floorboard, like, hey, I'm really sorry about this, Wade. Like, I didn't expect this to happen.
Yeah, we were talking through the seats, for sure. No doubt about it.
Have you referenced that story later on in life? Like, this is one of the closest I came to dying?
Absolutely. Yes. Well, dude, Squires and I still work together, so that's always fun to bring that one up with Squires. Because, yeah, we were there for inline skates, right? For the Play It Again show. So, yeah. So he's still doing it. He's still hammering on skates. So, good times. Shit that you can't make up to. Shit that you just can't make up.
Yeah, it was one of the most scared I've ever been in my life. I think probably you too.
Well, if I knew now what I know then, we would have been in much better shape. I pack everywhere.
That was really the most scared I've ever been in my entire life. Wade, I'm sorry that I could have gotten you killed for $25 worth of Mexican brick weed, but we lived through that one. And I've recorded my first and only Weed Stories podcast. I sure could have been doing this every year, and by now it would have been one of those things where I would have gotten crowdsourced stories and stories from pros, and we would have had some incredible weed stories compiled, but I didn't do that. One thing that I did do with weed in this podcast was I got Weed Maps to actually sponsor the podcast and pay me money to be a sponsor of the podcast. I didn't get to record an ad for them because they are the only prepackaged ad that I've ever had in this podcast. They sent me a file. I played it in the podcast. It didn't really fit in, but whatever. I could have made them a much better ad than what they had. And really, I still can't tell you what Weed Maps does. Even though they gave me an ad that explained what they did, I still could never really figure it out and still haven't figured it out to this day. But getting a weed sponsor was a goal of mine, and I eventually got it. But when I did and my kid found out, he was totally disappointed in me. And from there, I never really pursued another weed sponsor again. I did have alcohol sponsors throughout most of the podcast, and my kid did not care about that at all, but whatever. The sponsors that I care about are the ones that make this podcast happen. So I'm going to end this 420 episode by thanking you for listening and thanking Elan Skis and Outdoor Research for making the Powell movement happen again this week and for most of the 480 weeks that I've put episodes out for. So thank you for listening and have a great week, everyone.